In this part of a series, a video lecture series on what is text, I would like to take you through an understanding of a better understanding or further understanding of what text is, how to analyze text, and how to assist our students in constructing the text. What I will do is to actually, rather than just give you a lecture, I want to take you through a series of steps that it took me myself to actually get there where I am today. Because when I do it, I figure you will actually follow with me my own chain of thought as it developed over the last 3 or 4 years. And in that sense, you'll get a better understanding of actually what I mean by thinking of text in ways different than what is typically done, which is as words organized by grammar. If it was true that words is organized by grammar, then you could just take a dictionary in French and with a few lessons in grammar, you could actually produce a poem, couldn't you? Or a newspaper article, couldn't you? Or a comedy sketch. But you know you can't. Well, why so? Why is it? Or maybe this you could help me now actually figure out whether this text is actually well-written text. But before we move on to this question, I want to just basically take you through the following thinking. So if words are not organized by grammar, how can we teach text? Well, typically, as I see it everywhere, wherever I go to schools, I'm sure there are exceptions. There are always little brilliant people everywhere, here and there, scattered, doing their little things, busy, unable to publish because, life is like that. So surely there are amazing things happening. But as much as I can, but other than that, so having acknowledged that, I also have to say that wherever I go, I don't see actually interesting things happening. So just I spoke to a 12-year-old being in the 7th grade, and she said to me, "Look, Ania, I created a poem." And I'm thinking, well, that would be interesting to look at, so I asked. I didn't care that much about the poem, although I did read it. I asked her, how did the teacher teach you to create a poem? And she said, we didn't. We were just told to do it, which is very typical of what I hear from my pre-service students. And also I see now and then in schools when I find time to actually go and visit with our students. So what happens is a teacher teaches or whatever does something with a story, whatever they do. Reads it to students, or students even sometimes are allowed to even read it for themselves. And then basically the teacher says, now you do your own story. Yeah, like you have seen what the carpet looks like, now create your own. You now have seen an iPhone, why don't you make it yourself? Or this is the same logic. You might be laughing, but it's the same logic. You've seen the magic, now recreate it. Right? That's what we do to our students. And then we have separate classes at 8 o'clock in the morning to teach them resilience. And resilience, we tell them it is about finding ways out. It's about not giving up and all of that. It's really, resilience really is to survive a teacher. That's what the students need, is to survive the teacher. And in fact, in the manner of speaking, probably it is even said or put in this way or framed it this way in some papers in literature. I don't know. Anyway, so we teach them resilience for the kids to survive us. But what is it that we do so that we actually support resilience, student resilience, right? So we don't actually break them. We allow them to actually feel powerful. Now, the reason why I'm discussing this with you, because what I would like to achieve through this lecture is for you to develop a critical framework for thinking about text. So for assignment 1, you will think, well, can I relate to it? Do I analyze text this way? Or maybe I do, but I never thought about it. I could never articulate it. Mind you, this is my own research. So whenever you quote it for this unit or for any other unit, you have to quote it as Ania Lian. First of all, nobody has seen it before in their life, what I will teach you. And secondly, it is my work, so it really pays off to reference it for many reasons. Okay, so for assignment 1, I want you to develop a critical framework to actually think about texts, and then think to yourself how could you apply this framework, how could you work with this framework to actually support your literacy skills. One of the questions that was raised just the other day in our on-campus classes, students said to me, Ania, in our Learn line we have different questions set up in the modules for focus questions, and then we have different questions for the assignment. And I wondered, how could it be so? I do nothing else but the assignment. So I had a look. And for example, in module 1, what we had is questions, what is literacy? Obviously, this question is the first question you have to answer in your assignment 1. So clearly, this coincides with the assignment 1. Are we all equally literate? Well, if you have a definition of literacy, you should be able to actually reflect about the terms in relation to which we assess students or around literacy, right? And the reason why we are mentioning it, including the 3-layer structures of the Australian curriculum, is because, which is the question 3 of the focus questions, it is because these are focus questions, but my screen doesn't capture exactly the, here it is better, a little bit better. All right. So because the assignment 1 asks you to justify your responses to assignment 1 in relation to the curriculum. That's why we are all sitting on the curriculum so much and looking at the concept of literacy through the curriculum. We're looking now at the concept of text in relation to the curriculum. Exactly, so that to give you terms and concepts so you can actually discuss your literacy skills in relation to the curriculum. And as I mentioned in our class just the other day, all responses on the discussion board were talking about 3-layer structure, which is the lowest level, which is language literacy and whatever else is there, language literacy and literature. This is not the 3-layer structure. The 3-layer structure, and I mentioned this in many of our YouTube lectures or collaborate lectures or on-campus lectures, and I need you to remember that because this is what I will be assessing, and this is what the Department of Education wants. The Department of Education wants you to actually stick to the curriculum, and the curriculum talks about capabilities, it talks about cross-curriculum priorities, and it also talks about outcomes specific to subject areas for a particular year, which need to be interpreted through general capabilities and priorities. Right? They need to be interpreted through those higher order structures, not any other way around or in absence of them, right? And this is the skill I'm teaching you. This is the skill that is required. Without actually learning how to do it, you don't need me. You could just pass any, you don't need ELA 200. ELA 200 is to teach you how to read the curriculum, how to read the subject area outcomes through the higher order thinking skills, which are the priorities and capabilities. So there. So this is just an example to respond to our students so that I make sure I covered it. I make sure that if some of our students on campus express confusion, I realize that maybe some other of our students feel it. So I just want to make this point. Okay, so having said that, we will return to our initial text, which was here. Oh, this is not the text. Here. So this is the text produced by a student, 7th grade student, about Pompeii. So she says she's gonna actually recite it. She's gonna record herself speak this text, and she's gonna present it to her students. So what makes this text what it should be? Instantly we have a problem. Well, we don't know what it should be because we don't know the purpose of it. That's very interesting because most of the time we ask our students, well, create your story, create your poem, create a summary. I mean, we do it daily. But how is the student create a summary when the student knows that in order to create a summary for her girlfriend to tell her how the movie was, she would say, "Oh, it was just nonsense, that movie." But when they speak to someone else, that they would say, "Well, I expected something else." And when they speak to someone even more formal, they would say something like, "I was a little bit disappointed because I didn't feel that it reflected the society the way I actually experienced it," right? So you can see how a summary of a movie can have different structures depending on the purpose, right? But the purpose, so that's why we're talking all the time about literacy being living in life, living in the life context of a society. The literacy doesn't live in the teacher who reads and then models everything and tells students how to do things. Literacy is out there. So students need to engage in the literacy practices by engaging the world, not by engaging a book or by engaging the teacher, right? So these are the sort of points I hope they somehow came through. If they didn't, they are now. And if you have questions about it, please engage me on Collaborate or on the discussion board. So we don't know whether this text is good or bad, right? We don't know. But now, okay, so we don't know. But let us now sort of play with it. So on the 24th of August, imagine she's reading this to 12-year-olds. On the 24th of August, who can actually hold it in their mind already? 24th of August, is it before or after? Before or after what? I don't know, just something. Where is it? AD 79. What's 79 AD? Well, kids are thinking like long time ago. Oh, 79, right? Mount Vesuvius erupted in Pompeii. Oh, yeah, it did. Oh, yeah, well, it's a bad thing, isn't it? It erupted with a deadly cloud of volcanic gas, stones, and ashes. Ah, okay, yeah. It's like the video movie I saw. What's that? The cloud reached lots of kilometers. Well, we don't even say what's 33 kilometers. It would be nice to actually compare it with something like, is it 3 times higher than the plane flies? Right? I don't know. What's a molten rock? What's the rock that is actually inside of the earth, right? It just doesn't exist anywhere. It would be good to tell it to a 12-year-old. But punis or something, I don't even know what it is, at the rate of 1.5 million tons per second. Well, what does that mean? What's the 5? All right. So you can see that if you want to put these numbers to a 12-year-old or 13-year-old who's going to listen to this text, the numbers sound like an avalanche of stuff, right? It's totally meaningless. Anyway, so there. But so what? Is this text actually doing what it's supposed to do? Well, we don't know. What's this text to do? What's this text to achieve? We can guess, but we don't know, right? We can guess or inform. What does that mean? You can inform in many different ways. You can laugh, and that's an information, right? You can use different devices to inform. So we don't even know whether it's actually informing. And as I showed you now, that it doesn't actually have descriptors that would make all these numbers meaningful to our students. I don't think it's really informing. So what is this text to do? Well, I will tell you pretty well what is this text to do. To satisfy the teacher. The teacher said do something and then record yourself and re-say it so I can see it. So as always, this text has nothing to do with literacy. This is not said that it's going to sit on a school website in order to show what our children, what our students investigate in order to what? Right? This has nothing to do with life. It has everything to do with compliance, a pedagogic task to make the teacher happy. It is a monkey behavioristic sort of behavior. I clap, you jump, and I give you a high distinction. I clap, you don't jump, well, I'll clap again. And if I 3 times clap and you don't jump, I'll call your parents. Right? There's nothing exciting about it, nothing that we actually know that is coming across so that we can actually see straight away what's this text to do and so on. So it's a pedagogic task to satisfy the teacher. Okay, well, she still has to do it, right? And I'm sitting next to her thinking, well, I've just taught on campus our students how to create riveting texts. So what do? Do I let a 12th grader, 7th grader to sort of write her own stuff? This is plagiarized, by the way, from Wikipedia. So do not look for this text on Wikipedia or on Google. It is out there, right? There are no inverted commas here because this probably was not relevant. So anyway, we got this text. We don't know what it is for. I'm sitting here wondering, am I going to help the student? So today, as I said, I will take you through steps to show you how this text changed, within an hour of my work with the student. So we didn't do magic, but we did enough for you to notice the difference. And now take you through the steps of how I got there so that you actually understand it. So for now, we will leave my friend Thea, my 12-year-old friend Thea. We will leave her alone now and the text, and we just move on with my own ways of teaching. And this time I was actually, this is all about my research, but I started with ESL students. I mean, with students teaching how to teach English to foreign, as a foreign language, say in Cambodia, China, and all of that. In CDU, I was teaching this particular subject. So I'll take you through all of that so you can see how it all, because it's all about literacy, right? It's all to do with language and with culture and with socialization and with critical thinking and using terms critically, in order to actually assert yourself as a powerful citizen, not some sort of little peon. Right, so I'll just take you through all of that. So we start with the beginning. A lot of times, as you know, when people teach poetry, a lot of times, basically, when people do, when we have NAPLAN tests, we basically ask for persuasive text or something of that kind. We never ask actually our students on the NAPLAN test to do poetry or a comedy sketch. There are reasons for it, because the system knows perfectly well that we do not teach creativity. We say we do. We have it in every attribute, in every learning outcome, everywhere specified. But why don't we test for it then? Oh, because Ania, it's simple. Not everybody can create poetry. I sometimes wonder about it because you know what? I look around and you can look around. Why is it that every indigenous person can paint? Did you ever think about it? Not every Western person can do poetry, but every Aboriginal person can paint. It's so I sometimes stop and wonder, what are they? They're having a paint gene, and I am missing the poetry gene. There's something interesting happening culturally, very interesting. Anyway, so my research that I will take, that my research started here, just with that question. And of course, it developed, and I'll take you until we come back to little Thea's text, but I just need to take you through steps. So, here it is. The family from Malaysia. They're all poetry writers, especially the mother and the little girl there, Ali. Ali on this picture was probably 10. She's my dear friend. And Ali writes poetry. This particular poem, I think it's by her mother, which you see here. But Ali produces lots of long poems. And Ali here wrote about the bird, right? Because her mother always, like typical mothers say, in particular cultures, so I mean, this is just full of stereotypes, right, guys? So put up with it. I had to do a lot with some, demanding mothers want their children to study all the time or a lot of time. So the little girl wants to play, she wants to be at home. The mother wants her to be at home. So the little girl is lonely and she talks to a bird, and bird gave her company. There was another poem, I think. Is it the same one? Oh no, I think this one is here. So this one is a little bit about the bird, and this one is about her wanting to play. So she's with her mates on the playground, and her mother says, come home or otherwise. So now nobody wants to play with her because nobody wants to get into trouble, right? So she can't play with her mates who are terrified of her mother. She needs to go home. She doesn't want to go home because she wants to play. And she says, look, Mom, I just can't stop that feeling. Kids want to play. Kids want to play. What a wonderful poem. It was posted by her mother on Facebook, who obviously realizes that she could be a little bit softer to the girl. Anyway, it's a sweet poem and a sweet expression on the girl, by the girl. So there is this website, poetrypoem.com. You can investigate it for yourselves and have a look. Is it important? Obviously, if you want creativity and richness, internationalization, it is important. If you just don't want any of that, then I don't know, your decision. Anyway, it's there, it's wonderful. So I was thinking, how could you teach people poetry? So, since it's a class and since it's online, I will answer the question. So the way I went, I thought to myself, what's poetry? Poetry is rhythm. music, right? It's a rhythm. Poetry has its rhythm, and we will cover it later on in a few weeks. I don't want to cover everything today, but it also has emotions. Poetry is emotions, and that's I started thinking this way a little bit before I got the grant to do supporting resilience in primary students, in primary school students, where I actually learned from neuroscience that it is not that we think, therefore we are. We actually it is that we feel, therefore we are. We don't learn by comprehending, and I'll come back to this point later on. We learn by actually feeling. Right? When you comprehend the text, you didn't actually understand it. You actually have to feel the text to get it. Right? Comprehension actually happens to people who are psychopathic or people who have processing disorders. But when you actually feel the text, you got it. And by feeling, it probably means connected it to all kinds of experiences that you can understand it beyond the level of its explanation, right? Explanation is a kind of, it's not the same as actually understanding of a text, right? Anyway, so feeling, emotion. And I was underlining these things here for my students. So what I thought to I thought to myself, how am I gonna teach my students to feel poetry? How do you make people feel poetry? So I thought, well, what about if we make them feel the music first, right? Makes sense? So we played. You won't be able to hear it because that's how my system is set up. You can only hear my voice. But we played in class the Australian anthem. And I can't sing, so I'm not going to sing it to you. But it is smooth and serene and all of those things. That's cool. Then we compared it with an American anthem, but then we compared it also with the Chinese anthem, which is starts with a trumpet, do 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 do, blah blah blah, and it really sounds like the international, da 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 da. Right, very strong, it's a bit very different from the Australian anthem. So it's very strong anthem. Interesting. Does this have anything in common with the Australian anthem, though? Interesting thought, right? Well, does it? Okay, so we didn't know yet. Or maybe we started already writing on the whiteboard, emotions and so on. I'll take you through. Well, anyway, we had Australian anthem, we had a Chinese anthem. So I thought, what would be this is how I teach you to teach genre as well. Very often people say, well, in order to teach the genre of the anthem, you just cover every anthem. No, because if you are born blind, you can't tell the difference between black and blue. If you if all you see is one genre, then you cannot understand it, because to understand means to compare and contrast. Anyway, so we were comparing and contrasting not just different anthems, but then I thought, what about if my students listen to You Raise Me Up, right? Does it feel like an anthem? Right? Does it feel like an anthem? And one of my students from Cambodia said, it's a romantic song. All right, I thought to myself, that's a chance for me to listen to something I really like. So I played. The Insatiable, right? The Insatiable by Daryl Hayes or whatever his name is. I'm not into those names. Compare. Is it the same emotion as that You Raise Me Up? Forget about the words, and thank God my students from Cambodia didn't speak enough English to actually hear the words. But how does it feel? Does it feel sensual? Which one feels sensual? Feel sensuality. So, it might be that in a Cambodian context, or maybe in a Chinese context, You Raise Me Up might feel romantic. I don't know. But that's what we need to compare and contrast, so that we develop intercultural competencies, right? So in a Western culture or in a particular genre of music, this feels romantic, but in different genre, similar things will not feel romantic anymore. So this is about comparing and contrasting. And I'm already introducing you to this concept of compare and contrast because I really, really, really think you need, as a teacher, have a database of resources where you actually, just like me on this little PowerPoint, you have more resources. And when you can do what I'm just doing now, compare and contrast quickly because technology allows it, similar things and yet different. Different. All right, so here are the links. I think this video is in your module. So we started to think, so we're looking at emotions, right? We're looking at emotions. Still, this is 2012, I think. Didn't get the grant on emotional, on resilience until 2013 and so on. So it's way before anything and way before I actually knew that the resilience and this stuff is connected. So we look at the anthem, at the genre of the anthem. And what we decided that it's a formal, right? So Insatiable didn't feel that formal, but the Chinese anthem felt formal, the Australian anthem felt formal, but so did You Raise Me Up. It did feel formal. Oh my goodness, you little things who speak English well enough, you know that You Raise Me Up is not an anthem, right? So we had to actually think. So anthem is formal, it's in the honor of someone, right? So anthem is in the honor of a country, of God, could be, or I don't know, could be. Someone said it, I wrote it down. I'm happy, I don't care. You can test it. In the honor of mother, maybe you test it. I don't know, maybe only in the honor of a country, right? Whatever. People just wrote those things. I left it there. I'm not going to contest it. I'm not interested in contesting it. It's just in the honor of, right? What about the mood? The mood of an anthem. Well, it's deep, right? But think instantly. You Raise Me Up is deep. Serenity mood, right? You Raise Me Up also has a serene. Reflective. The mood is reflective, right? It is. It has appreciation, sensation of appreciation. It's touching, touches your heart. Raises in you high level emotions, right? That's why the music is big. It's uplifting. But once we started uplifting and went to bonding, we started asking ourselves the question, does the You Raise Me Up feel bonding? And there is no yes and no answer, I suspect, because maybe from a Cambodian perspective, it might feel bonding. But from the Western perspective, if you didn't actually understand the word, would the music feel bonding? Or is it so introspective that actually it's not bonding so much as it is more introspective, right? So that's why the words go so well with, it's a prayer, right? So You Raise Me Up is kind of a prayer. I don't even think he sings it to a mother. He sings it to God or something, or impersonification of God, like the spirit or whatever, or his higher self. That's how I read it. So You Raise Me Up, the tune, the beat, the mood, the rhythm, all of the mood of it is more introspective. So now we got a comparison here. One is introspective and the other one is looking outwards, right? Looking outwards. Ah, interesting. The reason why I mention all of that this is very important, it gives you and your students, that's why I'm actually taking you through the history of all of that, because it also teaches you to think how to work with different genres and methodology of it. And it's interesting that after we've come up with all of these things, we started to identify the discerning features. So I didn't ask students to tell me the difference, which is a typical sort of thing, but let's write, and let's compare and contrast. And all of a sudden we found this, what seems to be, and we're not married to it, it's just a working hypothesis. It feels like that You Raise Me Up feels more introspective. Right? Listen to the music. Ask someone who doesn't know the words whether it feels this way. It would be hard to find someone who doesn't know the words, but anyway, that's the hypothesis. But we now know that anthem is about we are all in it together. It's a large music. It's about encompassing. It's about taking. It's about bringing us together. Whereas the other one is more reflective, and sensual music is a little bit different again. It doesn't have this big tones. And those big tones are very visible in the Chinese anthem, right? They're very big, full of pathos, right? Which is emotions from, I mean, like high, big emotions, which is almost like overcoming something. That's what pathos is. You overcome your condition. So from zero to everything, right? So it's this pathos is from zero to, you jump from lowest emotion, from being nothing to being everything. So it's a sort of emotion of overcoming. You cannot overcome alone. You can overcome alone, but because the music is so big, it's about overcoming it together, right? So it's again, it has the bonding, wearing it together. It does have this element of wearing it together. So that was interesting, wasn't it? So we did that, and we talked about the emotional scale, where the bottom is depression and the highest levels are the love, the serenity, and everything in between. We have everything in between, like blame, frustration, hope, optimism, feeling better about things, so you go from bottom to the top. So there's a scale, emotional scale. It's good to remember, because poetry is actually created by playing with that scale, not just with emotions, but also with the scale of emotions. So I missed you. I felt nothing. When you left, I could only, I'm still hearing the steps, the sound of your steps. Right? So that's the sort of like there. And as your reader, you're waiting. What will happen next? Is he going to commit suicide, or what is the poem somehow going to take you through emotions to the point that the the author of that poem will get out from it and will reach higher level of emotions, right? You can say it. So that's what poetry creates. I was nobody. I was nowhere. I'm still there. I'm still there. I'm still there. But the fact that he can write about it, you can feel that he's harnessing his own power. So even though he says he's still there, he's not anymore there, because you can feel it. The fact that he talks about it, he's you know somehow trying to come to terms with it, and that's already a better energy. Anyway, so the poetry is not just emotions, but it's also scale of emotions. So that's interesting. And then I started playing with starting to classify things. I love classifying things. Academics like classifying things because then you can actually see them on a spreadsheet. We love spreadsheets, right? So I'm a little bit sarcastic about it, but it's actually a good thing to see things, how they actually relate to one another, even hypothetically. So I just sort of started to, you know, write emotions here and pull out words from texts to actually locate emotions in somewhere from text. So that was then, right? And just recently, I taught in Vietnam, and as a result, when you teach somewhere, um, it makes you think, very quickly and hard. And I started to actually think to myself, because I'm 20 years of my work has been committed to thinking about the structure of inquiry, how the text is actually, how the inquiry is structured, and therefore how the text should follow. So what is expected by the readers in the text, any text, be it fairy tales, school presentation on a particular topic, a newspaper article, anything, it will have the same structure because the brain expects particular things, right? So they have actually things in common. I'm not actually married to this hypothesis, but this is what's been working for me pretty well for some time. So I put on the top here the emotions. Now these are just emotions, but there's about 300 of them. Every time I teach this particular class and I pull out the text, I put more emotions in because there's many emotions, and it's very interesting to think of text as emotions, because a text is is an act of intention, right? You don't open your mouth unless you have an intent, and then you structure this particular intent. But how do you structure the intent? You want actually to evoke in your listener a particular emotion. So when you say to your lover, I love you, there's a reason why you chose those words. When you say I hate you, there's a reason, right? When you say this makes me laugh, there's a reason why. You want particular emotions. You want to actually evoke particular emotions. So it doesn't matter whether you report about someone driving a car into the bakery at 2 o'clock in the morning, or about the volcano, or about how you miss a person, right? Each of the time you want, when you report on something, when you share, you want to evoke emotion. So intention is about evoking emotions. So I thought if we put emotions here, so intentions are emotions, and then we put structure of the text, then we could actually create a text or analyze a text in terms of in a particular structure of the text. So say the beginning, you call it, people call it the beginning, but there's no such a thing like the beginning of a text. It just means nothing. You cannot create a text by saying to people begin. Say to a 5-year-old begin the text. They will look at you with an open mouth. But when you say to them, we need to now focus the story, focus it in place, in time, and the kid is looking at you, okay, what emotion, what emotion do we want to evoke in the reader as we focus the text? You probably can think of better words for little children, but something to this effect. When we want to focus the text in place and time, what emotion do we want? Right? And actually, before you even ask this, you might actually then explore text. So that how does Cinderella start? Once upon a time, there was this magnificent family. They were all happy and they had one beautiful daughter, right? Setting the focus. Once upon a time, once upon a time. What is the emotion? You have it here. It's a mystery. Once upon a time, or one day, a mighty lion, right? One day, one day. I will just remove a mighty lion from here because it's wrong. It should be here. All right, so one day, it's a mystery. One day or once upon a time, it's a mystery. And then what happens next? What happens to now? Disturbance doesn't mean that the negative happens. Things has to happen. It could be a positive thing, right? But in the lion case and in the Cinderella case, a negative thing happens. So in Cinderella case, so there was a beautiful family disturbance. The mother died. Right? The mother died. It's a change. It's a change. So what do we have with the lion? Well, before we actually look what we had with the lion, we have to actually analyze the beginning, right? So the setting the focus, a mighty lion. So one day, and everybody listens. Oh my God, the mystery is starting. So what happened one day? Well, actually, after the mystery, we go to quite a miserable mood. What we say is that the mighty lion was tired from hunting all morning. What do you think? Does this feel like joy? Does this feel like a happy? Does this evoke a mighty lion tired from hunting all morning? How do you feel? You feel tired too. Just when someone says the mighty lion was tired, you feel tired too, right? So the author is now signaling, but whatever happens next will be read by the lion in relation to his current mood, which is he's tired. So when the mouse runs over his back, he's not gonna say, "Oh my God, I love you, mouse." He's gonna say, "Blame me," or blame me, whatever is the word in English. Why are you annoying me? It is as bad as it is, and now you, right? So he's gonna put his big paw over the mouse and he say, "You know, I'm gonna kill you. I could kill you. I could." Interesting, isn't it? So a mighty lion is tired. So there's a frustration of sorts. And then there's a kind of like with a relief. So look, what typically happens to be words organized by grammar, now when we actually analyze just the so-called beginning or the focus, how that author, when we look at the emotions in relation to which the author set up the focus of the text, right at the beginning, that we have three emotions: a mystery, a frustration, and a bit of a relief, right? So we have one day, tired. He's sleeping now, right? Look at that. So when you want your students to actually create a text, you can actually show to them, you can explore what other options are there. You can check the kangaroo who got his pouch, how a kangaroo got his pouch. This is the story I just stumbled on and I analyzed. But you can analyze any story and see how many things are happening just when the author wants to set the focus. This is not a happy lion. This is a sort of like, oh, well, another day lion, right? Oh, well, it's another day. Now, if you want to build resilience, coming to my research now, if you want to build resilience, you want students to have choices. You want students to know that text is a series of choices of emotions. This is very important because children then now know when people talk to them, they had choices, and they also themselves, when they speak to these people back, they have choices of emotions. So the lion didn't have to be tired after morning hunt. He could have been satisfied with his morning hunt, right? He could have been satisfied. Or he could have been something else. If he didn't catch anything, there could be other positive emotion, right? So you can ask students, you can actually explore other texts to have a look what other options did the lion have. You can only explore, however, other texts and other emotions if you have a database of emotions in text. That's why I'm saying they need to be created by you. Once you have a little pool, a little portfolio, a little database online of emotions, you can click, oh, look at that emotion. This is how how otherwise a lion might, or a lion might have felt. Because look at this, in this other story, things went bad, but the kangaroo was still happy. Or look at this, things were very something else, but didn't matter. The kangaroo thought all is well. Or, I mean, do you see what I'm saying? So when you actually do not approach the text as words organized by grammar, the world is opening. The world of choices is opening. You don't need at 8 o'clock a resilience studying Aesop stories from 8 to 8:30 in the morning every day to build students' well-being. It's there in a regular classroom of your literacy, right in front of your eyes. Right? So there. So I'm not sure whether I analyzed the lion story very well, but let's just so you can check it for yourself. But let's go with Cinderella. What was the disturbance? The mother died, right? Now is a dialogue. Oh my God, people are talking to the widower. You know, your wife has died. That's really bad thing. But you know, you have a daughter. It'd be good if you had another wife. You know, get a wife. You know, the house without a woman is like something, something without something. So get a wife. You will be a happy man again. So development. He gets a wife, right? And things are not going as well as the dialogue promised it to be. But there's a resolution. Things happened and wasn't too bad, right? Things turned out good. The moral of the story, act well, things will go well, or think well, or do well for others, things will turn good for you, or something, whatever it is. So with the lion was similar stories. So they had the dialogue. So after the disturbance, when he was not happy, he said to her he can kill her. She said to him, "Don't kill me." Then the development happened, which is the lion. Something happened to the lion. Resolution. The mouse came and helped the lion. The moral of the story is, well, whatever. What do you think the moral should be? Could be. Sometimes I remember different morals. The moral there is that little things count. Little creatures are just as important as big creatures, but there could be another moral. Sorry for that. So you get pretty good the story now, right? So you could say, well, what does this mean to my literacy practices? Because Ania, this is my assignment 1. Well, what do you think it might mean? Before, this is our table, right? So we're thinking about our table. Before, we were talking about the linguistic range. So we were talking about the range of text because we were analyzing the activity of proposed by one of our students when she said, my literacy practices, I read books to my daughter. So then we actually used the curriculum to actually analyze, because that's what you need to do. We were analyzing this activity in relation to the curriculum, and we were finding out how much is actually involved in reading a story to a child. And that's very nice because we learn to critically think about the things we do even in our houses. Not that anyone polices you and what you do in your house, but it was a nice exercise to find out about the range of things we need to consider in order to provide a rich literacy environment to our children as opposed to relatively narrow. But now, when we actually look at the way of analyzing a text in terms of emotions, in terms of range of emotions, in terms of also choices, and we could actually with our children in this specific activity. I mean, you can actually think in relation to your other literacy activities, but in relation to this one could actually think how they could actually recreate the story using different emotions, right? And one could actually think, where would they look with their child for examples of alternative emotions? What text would they would actually explore, so that now they could create an alternative story with different emotions and have fun. They could also look how particular emotions and particular frames of references are expressed in indigenous stories, and also what happens actually in texts from Asia. This point I will make a little bit better in part 3 of our lecture, so that you understand how actually texts are in fact a play on cultural references. And since we want our students to be international citizens, and citizens not just of a little village, the kind of the suburb where I live, and to be really good there, but we want them to have bigger heads and be actually competent and understanding and have an ability to actually work in a range of contexts. What's important for our students to actually explore frames of reference, emotions, and cultural references, in fact, how they work across different communities, so that students can draw on them, play with them, or at least understand them when they actually encounter them. All right, so we've done so far. So now we have this, we come back to the text of Thea, right? And I might actually also give you an example that I gave in class. So we come to back to the text of Thea. So, right, so what do we do with this? I said to Thea, okay, so because I'm trying to teach her whatever I taught you just now, and I'm trying to actually think to myself, oh my God, if you're gonna teach it to your to your students, so it should probably work with Thea. So Thea, why are you starting the text with on the 24th of August, blah, blah, blah. So she gives me this beautiful look. Nobody knows where we're starting. Wikipedia started with that. Okay. So, Thea, friend, what emotion, you know how, and I gave her all this stuff. I said, Thea, what emotion do you want to evoke in your audiences when you open your mouth? Interest. All right, but what emotion? So in order to be engaged, what emotion? What do you want them to be? Upset? Do you want them to be appalled? Surprised? She's looking at me like, what else, Ania, do you invent, right? You see what the range? You see the range? I mean, she could have started with appallment, I don't know how to spell it. Then you can surprise. Oh my goodness, what else is there? What do they call it? What did I say? Laughter? What else can you do to people? Appallment, surprise, what else did I say? Right? All of that, what would you like in them? What would you like them to do? I don't know. All right, so what did I do? So that's what we did. Let's have a look. And we just worked quite in a very rough way, but that was good enough. That was good enough. So, what do I have here? I just pasted a copy. Text is emotions plus structure, right? So emotions were on the top, all these emotions, and then on the left was the structure, so we know that. So what we did here, we set the focus, right? So what we have, intrigue. We want to intrigue the reader. Well, you don't intrigue the reader by saying on the 24th of August AD 79, because you have them gone in 3 seconds. But when you say, if we know that she is to present this text, even if it is about pleasing the teacher only, but there will be little beings there listening to her, her mates, so she's got her mates there, she's going to talk to them about it, or the video will be talking to them. Well, 2,000 years ago. I mean, this is like we produced this over the dinner, right? So you can imagine was relatively could have been improved, but that's what it is, a draft. Then you can actually give it in classroom to each other in groups, and other kids can improve it, and we reread it. we need to remember that there is such a thing as a draft. I think students have a, not students, children in school, so they're students, right? Students have, we often think that the text is actually a ready product. It's always a draft. There is an article that you are probably reading on somewhere there between me and Emikesh. That took Emikesh 1 year to actually produce her own work on it, and then it took me 7 months to redraft it, right? We had so many drafts in between. So no text is instantly a text. So this is our first draft. So don't take it as a final. This is the first draft over the dinner by asking questions of Thea. So we have 2000 years ago. Everybody goes like, oh my God, that's longer than I lived, right? And then they might be scratching themselves and thinking, well, maybe it's longer than my mother lived. Long time ago. Must have been at the time of the dinosaurs. That's pretty good, isn't it? That's a pretty good guess. And there we are. 2000 years ago. That intrigues people, right? So what happened 2000 years ago? Well, Mount Vesuvius erupted. Oh my God, what does that mean? It sounds really bad. So I wrote it as disturbance. But disturbance is not disturbance. It could be, so just like setting of the focus could be in different ways. Surprise, appallment could be anything, right? Whatever. Disturbance could be anything. It could be to unsettle the reader. The mother died, like in Cinderella, or a mice ran over the lion's back. This is also unsettling. It could be about saying, well, we thought in the past, blah, and we were right. So it's about telling the reader all is well. So disturbance is basically a change. Some change happened, right? Change to the state of affairs. But change is not always negative. It's just that very often in soap operas or movies, it is. But it doesn't have to be. Like could be when you in your scientific report, we always thought that this and this will happen, and now we know it, right? So disturbance, after this, we've done all of that. You can say research is now showing, confirming. And so this is not anymore disturbance, which says, something bad is going to happen. It's actually a positive thing. So you need to, when you actually follow the structure of the text, you need to decide on an emotion in order to choose the right words. This one was about unsettling the reader, and we didn't actually go through all of that in order to choose the words of unsettling the reader, because we didn't have time. Okay, at this very moment, in the particular occasion which I spent with this particular student, we didn't have the time. But think to yourselves, how could you actually change all of that, those texts and those 33 kilometers and so on, to give that text, to make this text actually evoke in readers this unsettling effect, because that's what you want them to do. Okay, then it's the dialogue, right? Remember, and the neighbors were talking to the father, go and marry and you'll be happy ever after, right? Notice that in Thea's text, original text, the only survivor that people know of, Pliny the Younger, is mentioned once and never again, right? And it was interesting because when we follow the structure of the text that I have created, there came a dialogue. So I said, Thea, like when we have a car accident, so what happens, setting the focus, in the middle of the night when you were sleeping, oh my God, someone took the car and drove it into the, remember it's a draft, so students can write like that, that's fine. Then they will rewrite it. But the first emotion is to actually surprise a person or appall a person, or what's the word, like, it's just surprise. I mean, how could anyone, why aren't they in bed at 2 o'clock in the morning? Instead, they take a car and drive it into a bakery. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, when everyone was sleeping, these people are driving a car into a bakery. Okay, so what's the dialogue, right? What's the dialogue would be here? Well, the police was here within minutes. The witness said this. Another mother who was across the road, heard the noise, ran to the child, and saw everybody was awake. It was such a big bang. What else happened, right? So people talk, and that's a kind of dialogue. I mean, right. And then, whatever. So what was very interesting when I was asking this Sophia, what will we put here? Who was talking? Did we have witnesses and so on? It was amazing. Everything she didn't have in her little Wikipedia plagiarism, she told me, I found those things on other websites, and I just found these things. Like, she found a study done, published in 2010 that talked about big temperature, high temperature, basically killing people even if they were sheltered. She also found the original letters on the web written by little Pliny the Younger. Isn't it amazing? She knew it. It was because she was so reliant without this structure on setting the focus, disturbance, dialogue, development, resolution, and all of that, without this structure, she just copied the text. But when we had the structure, she knew already of resources because she's done her research, and now she knew how to use them. Again, we were focusing here on the structure. We weren't focusing on the emotion of the dialogue, right? We didn't. But if you worked with her on this draft and tried to now bring out those emotions, then you could actually change some words and so on. And imagine what started with the plagiarism now becomes an amazing creative story where she actually gathers a lot of evidence from different websites and puts it in here in an interesting way and emotionally revealing. Beautiful, just beautiful. All right, so she found this letter and Pliny the Younger was really emotional. He said the world was dying around him and he with it. It's just, and that made the text powerful now. So imagine when she reads it to these kids and she talks about this stuff, it's amazing. Then development. We have this is development. This is I'm not married to this particular whether this should be there or somewhere else, but let's say, well, what happened now? So what? So all this happened, so what? So what? So it's a kind of clarification set, so what, right? So we want these people to sort of put it together somehow. Now, all of this happens, so the reader is now kind of in pieces, or the interlocutor, the audience is now in pieces. They've been taken through all this drama, emotional drama. So clarification, so what is it? She didn't have centuries on before, but I said, well, how we will put it now in perspective, right? Put it in perspective, clarification, perspective, putting things in perspective. And centuries on all of this, that people were plastered, this centuries on this allowed people to see exact positions, how people died and all of that. And then we had it here as resolution, again, no emotion. So that has to be still be identified by the student and then a draft and then only the final version after other students went through it and the author again and so on and so on. So what's the resolution now? Well, what happens, so all of this happened and, Pompeii was discovered and now it is a museum and so on. So what she's saying, by the way, I don't have conclusion in my little structure, that structure here. And where is it? Sorry, friends. Sorry. Here. I don't have, I have dialogue, development, resolution, and the moral. But I forgot. When I was with Thea, I forgot, so I put the conclusion there. That's all right. Doesn't matter. We can remove it. So we can have this here and that here, probably. I don't know. Because I don't have emotion, I'm a little bit lost at this very moment because emotion was not targeted. So I'm not quite sure what is finishing where. But that's how you will have to decide. Once you know that you finished with the emotion, you know that you finished the particular structure. So what we have, Pompeii was this big. So we just remove the conclusion, right? So that makes me happier. So basically, so what's the resolution? Now so it was discovered and now it is a museum and so on. And then I said to Thea, what's the moral of the story? And she looked at me like moral is only in fairy tales, right? So how can you have a moral to a report like this? And I'm sure that you are all looking at me going like, oh my God, Ania, newspapers don't have morals. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And that's when you look for students and you say to them, should we have a moral? And that's why having a structure of a text which is independent of your imagination is important, because the structure asks questions off of you, right? Says, do you have a resolution? What kind of emotion do you want to, what kind of emotion do you want this resolution to actually evoke in the reader? What emotions will you be using in order for this emotion to actually be evoked? What will you be playing with? Or what about the moral? And you go like, and students are looking at you and you think, well, let's have a look at other texts. Do they have a moral? And they say only fairy tales. So you say, what about the newspaper article? And they say, no, they don't. Okay, well, you pick up a newspaper, for example, about the bakery, right? So the car drove into the bakery at 2 o'clock in the morning and woke up children and had witnesses because someone else was just outside throwing out the rubbish and whatever, right? And the resolution is that they're all in the custody now, awaiting the trial and all of that. So it's all cool. The resolution is there. What about the moral? Well, the moral very often is, and I'll give it to you in a draft because I don't have enough English or time for it. The moral is, not just sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning, but definitely don't drink and drive. Or people write sometimes in newspapers, please take care, Easter is coming, right? So that's the moral. Please take care, Easter is coming. Small accidents, and so on. So people do put an ending. So how did I dig out the moral of the story from Thea? Well, I said, why are you talking, Thea, about Pompeii? She looked at me. Well, it's very simple, Ania. I'm talking about Pompeii because nobody else gonna talk about Pompeii. Well, pretty good answer, isn't it? So I said to her, "Oh, but why Pompeii? Because it's horrifying. Okay, so why do we tell stories which are horrifying? Ah, to horrify others? Right, but what is so horrifying? Why are stories sometimes horrifying to us? They unsettle us. Why? Why? Because they remind us that we are just off the trees, right? We're not like million years off the trees, or maybe we are a million, but not a billion, right? We're still having we're still having a very fragile existence. We're still very much at the mercy of nature, right? So I wrote that about the mercy. I have to say, I have to admit, with my hand on my heart, I wrote this bit. Pompeii is a reminder that we live on a fragile planet. So that came out from our discussion, but I wrote those words. And I said, Thea, what will we write? So Thea just said it, and we should be aware of it. And I thought to myself, that will do. The idea that we should be aware of it sums it up perfectly well. You don't have to now talk about wars. You don't have to talk about living in peace and all of it. It just sums it all. Yeah. Get your act together. Remember it, because we could be. This is true. If you watch science festivals online, and so they would tell you anytime we could be thrown off the orbit if something happens, and we will be a wandering planet in the universe. Is this possible? There are planets like this that are thrown off the orbit. It could be anything. So instead of arguing and killing one another, we could actually take care about of our own existence here, and to make it less fragile. And that's such a good ending, such a good moral. And when you actually now, even though we didn't sort out the emotions, but only emotion here and much less further down, but just the structure of the text without actually yet playing with emotions. So it's only a very basic draft. Look at this. When you look at the text here, which was plain, nothing to it, all objects, even people were plastered, so it is possible to view people, blah, 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 and da, da, da. When you look at this text, when it says, so long ago, a horrible thing happened, and research actually now tells us what horrible happened, and there was a person, that person we identified here, we found some text from him, eyewitness, who was living through it. And all of this is frozen in time, and it tells us what was happening. It is a living museum in a sense, but it's also a reminder. Now we have a message. a totally different text, just the first draft. And that's what I very often say to people. You need a structure, but actually it asks of you questions. So now we know the text, what text consists of. If you say the text consists of beginning, middle, and an end, these are not useful questions, because you cannot create a text according to do the beginning now, do the middle, and do the end. But when you have structure of the text in this way, disturbance, dialogue, development, and so on, you can actually say, okay, what am I going to put in here? And now you have more precise questions, which is, all right, in terms of what emotions. And I will be showing you in part 3 also how you actually glue emotions together in order to get the key emotion right. So the main emotion consists of smaller emotions, right? So, and I will show you in part 3 how to glue them together pretty briefly, but just to give you a bit of an idea, not to make it into a 5-hour video lessons, but just you will see that. So once we have a pretty good text structure, already the first draft looks relatively meaningful, and the text becomes more resonating with us. Just the emotion, just the structure of the text already made the text a little bit more resonating with us. I want to show you one more thing. Sorry for this class to be so long, but this is we missed a few classes. So that's why it sort of goes on like that. In module 4, you have this video here. It's not a video, it's a PowerPoint. And it's here. All right. So Joanna Humphreys created something for one of the units she used to do with a subject I used to teach, but I no longer teach because I teach this one now. Okay, so I'll just take you quickly through it. What she did, using animation features of PowerPoint, she compared the features of a newspaper and a scientific report. And I'll show you what. So that's an additional way to what I just did, but I'll just put it in context. Just give me a second chance. So look at this. I'm just trying to make it visible. This is the scientific report. And what she says here, look at this. She says it has a title. It has subtitle, right? So very often what it has, building resilience in primary school students, colon, a play-based approach, right? So it does have a subtitle. What else does it have? Headings, right? Scientific report has headings. And remember, those headings actually are emotional, right? Every heading, every title, even the title of a story is emotion. Because what do you want with a title? To surprise people, confront them? Do you want to appease them, right? You think about it. So you structure even the title and the headings are about emotions. We always knew it, right? We always knew it. Or Big Bang confirmed, right? Or challenged or something, right? Big Bang confirmed or something. Big Bang confirmed. So even the title is about evoking emotions. All right. So then it has short paragraphs. And a table. But let's have a look at the newspaper. Newspaper also has a title, doesn't have headings, doesn't have short paragraphs, has long paragraphs, no table, photos, caption. Right, isn't it interesting? So that little thing showed you the general layout and what is expected. But what should be inside of those long columns in the newspaper? How do you tell what happened to the bakery at 2 o'clock in the morning? So you should have a photo, you should have a title like drink driver or a drunk driver or something, and so something, something again, you have to think about it. You have to think about what emotion. So you want to be appallment and surprise, right? Or something. You've got to identify the emotion, and then yourself, if you want to create a text which is for a newspaper of this kind, you need to explore other text to actually identify how best it is to actually evoke this particular emotion of surprise or of appallment or something, right? So when you actually write your assignment, for me, assignment 1 for this unit, what's important is that you actually assess it is not to tell me how literate you are, it's to tell me what is needed and critically assess your literacy skills. How you search, do you search through different texts of similar or other genre to actually work with emotions? Are you conscious of it? So it's very important to start actually familiarize yourselves with um, complex ways of working with text so that then later on when we move to assignment 2 you can then actually build on this. So ask yourself whether how aware are you of working with text in complex ways. Maybe it is in a similar, not necessarily the same way as I do, but in ways that allow you to actually draw on the wisdom and structures of other texts, so that you actually, rather than just writing a poetry, you actually do engage in analyzing poetry and analyzing emotions and so on to actually create things. So to cut the long story short, this particular lecture is about engaging you in reflecting on your own literacy skills so that you can critically analyze your own practices and later on build on it to generate for the purpose of assignment 2. Okay, so so I pretty much finished for today. So because you will watch the part 3, this is just pretty much done. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. And yes, so layout is important, just like Joanna showed, but then within the layout, you have to actually start thinking of the impact that you want to actually for your text to have, and the impact is the intention of the text, and the intention is the emotion. So so the question is how you yourself and then with your students will you be learning how to express different emotions, and for that you need to actually do research because you can't get it out of your head. You actually have to get it from other texts, and that's how learning actually happens, by studying other texts. And that's what acculturation is. Acculturation is to be actually socialized to a rich range of frames of reference, of way of expressing, of cultural references, including Asian and including indigenous, so that you can actually reflected in the way you analyze text or in the way you actually play with those symbols and references in order to create text. But anyway, I tried to make it as simple as possible for myself and hopefully for you. And I hope that these techniques I showed you in this class, the one before and the one that's in part 3, I hope that they actually give you some tools for thinking about literacy practices, and also for teaching. All right, so for now we will finish.